Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Planetarium show. We've got a fun one for you tonight. But first off, hi, I'm Jessica. I am the Planetarium Director. With me tonight are two of our students. We've got our students back from summer break, so hopefully we'll be seeing some other faces in here as well, although I'm sure Allie will still be back for some streams as well. But tonight we have two of our students. I will let them say hi and introduce themselves, and we'll start with Lynn.
Hi, I'm Len. I'm a teaching physics and astronomy student here at UMD, and it's good to be here.
Oh, that's right, you changed. I forgot about that. Okay, we're gonna have to chat about that later. Anyway, Brayden.
Hi, I'm Brayden, and I'm a vocal music education major here at UMD.
All right, so tonight's show, there's something funny going on over there.
Okay, you want me to tell? We ordered DoorDash. We
Uh-huh.
lost the DoorDash for the coffee. Like they gave it to the wrong person, and then my roommates came in to give me the coffee, but they saw I was doing the live stream, so they're like trying to slide it underneath the camera. No. They wanted me to take a sip. So that
Make sure you stay
good,
hydrated. This is
good,
stressful.
great way to start off this live stream.
You know what? I approve. I mean, slyly getting coffee, I 100% approve.
Go along
Okay.
with the good coffee.
No. Okay, so our show tonight is exploring early astronomy. If you've been around for a while, you might know that I have attempted to do the show twice, and both times something came up and we ended up having to cancel the stream, but we are finally doing it tonight. Let me get all set up here. And I gotta remember how to do all of this. So it's been a while since it's been more than just me and Allie. But I'm very excited to have people. Okay, there we go. Got it. Okay. Now, as always, if you have any questions throughout the show tonight, feel free to leave them down in the comments. I know Brayden is keeping an eye on that. I think Lynn's also keeping an eye on it. They will let me know as questions come up. Because there is a little bit of a delay, we may not get to your question right away. Anything we don't answer, we will make sure that we get to at the end of the show. One more thing that I want to say heading into the show is I am not an expert in this subject at all. It's something I am fascinated by and very interested in, but I have a very cursory knowledge. So hopefully this will maybe at least inspire you and you'll be able to go and kind of look into more stuff yourself. But just know I am not an expert. Okay? So the goal of the show is to take a look at what early cultures did when it came to recognizing and using patterns in the sky. Because from what we have found from cultures all over the world, is they all noticed patterns and used them in some way. Whether it was building tools or designing buildings, there was some way that they took notice of those patterns and used them. And for a lot of these cultures, we don't have any knowledge of why or how they did it, because a lot of them didn't have a written language or any documents were lost or destroyed. But there are a few that we do have written documentation from and can kind of better understand what it was that they knew and why they were making and doing the things that they were. So to get us kind of broached into the subject, I figured I'd just go ahead and start with what a lot of people know of if we talk about any sort of ancient cultures and astronomy. Stonehenge is usually one that comes up. So Stonehenge is the structure that's found in Salisbury Plain in England. It has a bunch of different vertical and horizontal stones. It also has concentric ditches and mounds, and I'll show you some more pictures as well. So this structure was actually built over a very long time period, from about 3000 BC to about, I believe it was 1600 BC. And the structure as we know it today with these massive stones, those stones were actually added quite towards the end of the construction period. For a very long time, it was really just these concentric kind of ditches and mounds like we're seeing here in this bigger picture. Now, in addition to this structure, there is also this avenue here that leads off to the northeast, and sitting in the middle of that avenue is a giant stone that's called the Heelstone. Now, from the beginning, it was noticed that that avenue and the Heelstone lined up with the rising sun on the summer solstice. And at first, archaeologists and historians, they wondered if it was coincidence or on purpose. And a lot of people early on were on the side of it's just a coincidence. But as we studied the structure more, we found that there are a lot of other astronomical alignments, not just the rising sun on the summer solstice. There are other sun alignments. There are also many different moon alignments within it. And once you see all of that together, you realize that this had to have been built purposefully like this. All of these can't just be a coincidence. Now, as I said, for a lot of these structures and cultures, we don't know why it was built. We have no written records from the peoples who created this. It's very likely that this formed some sort of calendar, whether it was to denote a certain time of year, whether for practical means like farming, or if it was for religious ceremonies, that we don't know. But the fact that it has these specific alignments means that it was likely a calendar type of structure. And Stonehenge isn't the only henge that we find in England or Europe. You actually find them quite often across the countryside. And a lot of them share similar types of alignments as well. Something a little bit closer to home that we think serves a similar kind of calendar purpose is one of my favorite structures. It's called the Sun Dagger, which is found in New Mexico. So up on the top of this really tall structure here, there sits these 3 stone slabs leaning against the rock face. And in that rock face, there's actually there's 2 spirals carved. You're seeing the biggest one here, but there's a smaller one off to the side as well. And at certain times of the year, the sun shines through these bigger standing stones and creates these daggers of light that hit the spiral. So specifically at noon on the summer solstice, the light shines straight through and creates this dagger of light that goes straight through the center of the bigger spiral. But there are also, as you can see here, alignments for the equinoxes and alignments for the winter solstice as well. Now, again, we don't know what purpose it had. It was probably a calendar. Why these dates were important, we can guess. I mean, as we ourselves, we use the equinoxes and solstices as a way of measuring the beginning of seasons and kind of the shifting of seasons throughout the year. So it's very likely that you had similar reasons for that there as well. Okay. But with all of these, I think you're starting to kind of see what I started this program with, that there's evidence from cultures all over the world of noticing these patterns and using them. So let's jump into one that I think I very much want to learn more about just in my own personal life, and a civilization that had some amazing astronomical knowledge, and that was the ancient Egyptians. So the astronomy of the ancient Egyptians got their start actually all the way back in prehistoric times. We see structures like this stone circle here that are dated back to 5000 BCE. And it has this similar sort of astronomical alignments like we saw in Stonehenge. So we see structures like this in Egypt as well. Now we know by the 3rd millennium BCE, so by 3000, that the Egyptians had a 365-day calendar, which sounds very familiar, right? They also had split the day into a 24-hour day, or 24-segment day. They had 12 equal segments of daylight and 12 equal segments of nighttime. And so you get that 24 segment day, which is ultimately why we use a 24-hour day. That has its roots from the early Egyptians. We also see a lot of evidence in what is left behind of the constellations that we know of as like the Egyptian constellations were pretty much got their start in these prehistoric times. All right. So let's talk about some of the major things. And of course, that means we have to talk about the pyramids. It's not even getting into the amazing engineering and skill to create these structures. They were created with such precise alignments to north, south, east, west that it is amazing how accurately aligned these structures are. And most of the pyramids have a, what's it called? A channel? Corridor? Shaft. That's it. That points towards what was the North Star at the time, which was not Polaris. Back several thousand years ago, the North Star was the star Thuban, which is in Draco the Dragon. And so these shafts in the pyramids actually point to Thuban, which was their North Star, where Thuban was at that time. And they did this because they believed that the pharaohs, when they died, ascended into the heavens and became one of what they call the imperishable stars. These are the stars that they saw up all the time. We now call them circumpolar stars. But they thought that this shaft would then guide them up to that region of sky where they would then become a star in that section that never sets, and then they would live up there. We also see other alignments in some pyramids. For example, the Great Temple of Amun-Re. I'm so bad at Egyptian names. It has a corridor that is aligned with the rising of the midwinter sun, so that the only time that entire corridor is illuminated is on that specific day. And I know of others as well where they have the same thing, but it's aligned with, I believe, the rising sun on the pharaoh's birthday, so that you get it illuminated on their specific birthday. There's so many different alignments with the Egyptian stuff. I mean, quite honestly, this could be even just a semester-long course in and of itself. Another really common thing that we see with Egyptian archaeology and a lot of their symbols and drawings and stuff had to do with the star Cirrus. So Cirrus is the brightest star in the sky. It's associated with the Greek constellation of Canis Major, the big dog. That's why it's known as the dog star. It was also to the Egyptians a dog constellation as well. And this one was particularly important because once Cirrus started making an appearance, rising up in the east just before sunrise, that meant that they were at the time of year when the Nile was going to flood. And so the appearance of this star at that time signified this really important time period for them, because the flooding of the Nile was huge for their agriculture. And so we see a lot of markings and architectural alignments to make note of when that star starts rising. That's also, fun fact, where our phrase dog days of summer comes from, because that's the time when the dog star is up. Learned that. I thought that was really cool. Let's see, some other amazing things that they did. They had their calendar of astronomical events that they used to set specific religious festivals. There are markings on many different temples that talk about how to use the stars to tell what time of night it is. And that's actually this middle one that you're seeing. That's a guide to using the stars as a clock. We also have recovered temple books that record the movements of the phases of the sun and the moon and the stars. And again, all of these were used to set like specific religious festivals and things. So there's a lot. And that is just barely scratching the surface, which leads me to my now totally not selfish promotion of if you are interested in learning more about this, we actually have a brand new show premiering this weekend. Every Saturday in September at 7 p.m., we will be showing Stars of the Pharaohs, which takes a look at more of the ancient Egyptian astronomy and also gets more into the modern understanding of these, of these patterns and things that they noticed. So come see us any Saturday in September if you want to learn more about the Egyptians. Okay. Let me see. Oh, yeah, so we just got a comment. It is interesting to consider that Egyptian civilizations lasted long enough that precession of the equinox might be noticed. And yeah, absolutely. Even, I can't remember for sure if they specifically, but I know once their knowledge got spread to the Greeks, Hipparchus in particular had a lot of their work and their like star charts and things, and was able to figure out precession based off of that. So even if they didn't directly, their records helped Hipparchus figure that out, which is really crazy, but so cool. So Hipparchus did use both the Babylonian and Egyptian knowledge as well. There's some pretty good evidence that he had Egyptian knowledge as well, but I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. So speaking of the Babylonians, that's where we're going next, because they were another civilization that had pretty advanced understanding of the night sky. They also had a written language, so we have these tablets with lots of different things written down. For example, in this left tablet, it's actually talking about Halley's Comet, which they noticed and wrote about. So the Babylonians actually got their jump start from the culture before them, the Sumerians. And we know this because the very earliest Babylonian star catalogs had stars and constellations named from the Sumerians. We also see kind of an overlap in what's called astrotheology, this idea that the planetary gods were an important role and a big part of their religion, and that seemed to be adopted from the Sumerians as well. The Sumerians also used a sexagesimal system, so that's a base 60, which the Babylonians continued, and we ended up continuing as well. That's why we have 60 minutes in a second, or 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, why a circle is 360 degrees. That's all thanks to the Sumerians and the Babylonians and their base 60 system. So the Babylonians are where we have kind of the first evidence of recognition that astronomical phenomena are periodic and that they applied math to make predictions on these patterns and phenomena. So they actually have, that's the rightmost picture here, is a list of stars classified, and we also have lists of planetary movements, sun and moon movements, and prediction tables of where they're going to be in the future. A lot of this was used because of that astrotheology. So they viewed kind of the heavens as the way that their gods would communicate with them. So the planets, I don't know why I did quotes on planets. The planets were basically representations of the gods, and based off of where the planets moved in the sky, they interpreted that as the gods sending them messages. And so it was really important for them to understand how those things moved and understand what those messages were so that they could act on them. And that's also where, once they noticed the patterns, a lot of the predictions, so that they could hopefully predict when something good or bad would happen. Let's see. They also seem to be the first to identify the solstices and equinoxes with the rising of specific constellations, which were the bull, the lion, the scorpion, and the goat, which, you know, we have Greek constellations that are the same because a lot of the Greek constellations are derived from the Babylonian constellations. Yeah, so that's, again, just barely scratching the surface here. There was a lot of amazing work that they did, and as I said, they were the first to really try and mathematically work this out. They used complex arithmetic to try and describe those patterns in the motions of the planets so that they could make predictions. And it's just, I think it's just fascinating. It's really cool. They were able to do this and figure this out. All right. So at the same time that we have ancient Egypt doing their stuff, the Babylonians doing their stuff. Over in Asia, we also have India and the Indian and the Chinese doing a lot of similar work as well. A lot of Indian astronomy kind of seems to be dated back to about the 3rd millennium BC, where, as we see with a lot of cultures, it was first used to kind of create calendars, and those calendars were then used to set dates for religious ceremonies and festivals and things. The oldest astronomical text that we have found is actually of Indian astronomers, and it describes the rules for tracking the motions of the sun and the moon for religious rituals, which is pretty cool. China, kind of the same thing. A lot of it was calendars, a lot of it was also timekeeping. Like with the Babylonians, kind of dividing meaning from the stars was really important in Chinese early astronomy as well. And they, from what we can tell, have the first ever recorded star catalog as well. And the Chinese were also able to accurately predict eclipses down in the very early, like, thousands of BC, which is really, really cool. Let me see, I see we have some comments here. Okay. Now, this is about where I stopped with the kind of early astronomy, because at this point is when you start to get a lot of mixing. Once Alexander the Great started his conquering, you end up getting a lot of mixing of the Egyptian and Babylonian stuff, bringing it back to Greece, and then that being taken back out and ended up being adapted by the Indian and Chinese astronomers, who then continued that work on before sending that information back west and igniting the kind of a Renaissance, European Renaissance, where we end up with Kepler and Copernicus and Galileo. And that's getting more into kind of lead up to modern astronomy. And I also didn't want this to be like 3 hours long. So I think here's a good place to kind of conclude our look at very early astronomy. And of course, this was primarily looking at European and a little bit of Asian and Middle Eastern astronomy as well. It's important to know that at the same time, we had the same things with almost better precision in some cases happening over in the Americas. Of course, you know, the Maya were amazing at their predictions and knowledge of the sky. For them in particular, it was about understanding Venus, because Venus was associated with their god of war. And so that was a very important thing for them, but they could predict eclipses. They had so much knowledge with that. Similarly, we have the Inca, who did a lot of solar observing because they believed they were descended from the sun. And so the sun was very important to them. And they built structures like this on Machu Picchu that are believed to have been solar observatories. Now, I'm not going more into these, one, because I don't have time, but two, also because I'd like to give credit over to Jim Rock, our Director of Indigenous Programming, who has just an amazing amount of knowledge about the indigenous astronomy that happened in the Americas. And I highly encourage you, if you are a UMD student, to take his class, which is Astronomy 1050, or come see a show or anything that he does, because it's an amazing wealth of knowledge. He's also just put together a display case in the Planetarium atrium that talks about Maya, Cree, Ojibwe, and Dakota astronomy. So if you want a little bit more, you can come check that out as well. So yeah, I hope with, oops, went a little too far there. I hope with this, you've at least started to get an appreciation for the incredible knowledge that early cultures have. I hate that there seems to be this stigmatism or this bias against early cultures, that they had to have been, really stupid because they didn't have the technology that we have, when honestly I think a lot of them could have been a lot smarter than we are with the amounts that they were able to learn and figure out without technology. So hopefully you've got a new appreciation for these. You've learned some really cool things and seen kind of how astronomy has been a huge part of the human existence from the very beginning. And yeah.
We do have another question.
Okay.
I've here the first point of Aries as where the sun climbs over the equator as beginning of spring, which makes me ask what was the start of the 30 degrees segment of Aries, or was it the middle of the 30 degrees segment? Any idea?
I have no idea. None whatsoever. I wish I could give some insight into that, but I do not know. So, yeah, like I said, very, very beginning knowledge on this. This is something that I'm hoping to continue to learn more of, and then maybe in the future I can do more in-depth looks at these, excuse me, I'm sorry, at the early astronomy or culture, or astronomy of early cultures. But for now, that's kind of about where my knowledge is what I've talked about here. All right, well, let's say we'll do another call for any other questions that people might have. While we see, let me tell you what's coming up this week at the Planetarium. So Friday, we're going to do Expedition Moons. And Saturday starts our new Saturday schedule for the month of September, where our family show at 2 p.m. is going to be Earth's Wild Ride, and as I mentioned earlier, our general public show at 7 p.m. is Stars of the Pharaohs, which is all about Egyptian astronomy. And in fact, let me do just a quick little trailer for our 2 Saturday shows. So this is Earth's Wild Ride. It's an interesting song choice for this trailer. Let me just turn it down. So the general idea with this show is it's set in the future where a grandfather is telling his grandkids, they all live on the moon now, what Earth was like, and you get kind of a geological history of the Earth, and as we kind of go to the Earth and explore things like the dinosaurs and volcanic eruptions and all sorts of really cool stuff. It seems like it is a very fun show, great for families, which is why it's our family show. And then here is a trailer for Stars of the Pharaohs.
Egypt, a land of mystery, where the majestic remnants of a fascinating culture and civilization tower above the desert, while other artifacts lie buried under the sands and hidden in the stars above. To the ancient Egyptians, the stars were a part of the great circle of life, death, and rebirth. They were the realm of the gods who governed the earth from the sky. Even the pharaohs were believed to be living gods who would continue to rule Egypt from thrones in the heavens long after their deaths. Many of their great temples and monuments were accurately aligned to objects in the sky and towered above the earth as if to touch the stars themselves. But what did the Egyptians really understand about the stars? And what is their contribution to our modern science of astronomy? I'm John Rhys Davis. Join me as we search through the temples, tombs, and the skies of Egypt long past to uncover the secrets of their knowledge. Knowledge hidden in the stars of the pharaohs.
Right. So as I said, both of those are going to be showing every Saturday in September. And it is a complete coincidence that I happen to be doing a rewatch of Lord of the Rings while we're about to premiere a show narrated by Gimli. Complete coincidence. He's such a great voice for it, though. All right. Well, do we have any other questions?
I think that's it.
All right. I'm going to put you guys on the spot. What do you think of all this?
Early astronomy,
Yeah,
or just the new shows.
either.
The,
I don't know.
the new shows are. I'm excited for the new shows, and yeah, early astronomy. It's interesting. It's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool stuff.
We did just get a comment. Years ago, there was a touring exhibit of artifacts of Ramses the Great. The ancient Egyptians kept two calendar systems, one with a leap year day and one without, not knowing which one was the correct calendar.
Yeah, I did see, and I had debated talking more about the calendar that the Egyptians created because they did have two separate, because they had one that was like 360 days, and then there was plus a 5 extra days, which was like winter, I think. But that created the 365. But then they had others as well, so that they could keep. They noticed the shifting of the dates of like events and festivals, like with astronomical alignments. I did not have a lot of time to fully delve into that. As you can imagine, any one of these topics that I introduced tonight could be an entire field of study, or is an entire field of study. And so I had to limit myself with what I let myself fall down the rabbit hole reading. But very, very interested, as I said, in learning more and hopefully doing more in-depth shows. So yeah. All right, well, I think we will call it there. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the show. We will be back next week with our monthly What's Up show to take a look at the astronomical events happening in September. Because, oh my goodness, it is September tomorrow. I'm not prepared.
That's so crazy. I don't know. Look, to think we're like 3/4 of the way through 2022.
I do not understand how this has
Neither do
happened.
Neither do I.
All right. Well, again, thank you everyone for joining us. We hope to see you either at the next live stream or in person at one of our Friday or Saturday shows. But until then, have a wonderful rest of your day and rest of your week, and we'll see you again. Bye, everyone.